All right, let's unlock the secrets of cool. Not the fleeting kind, but the kind that really makes a lasting impression. We're doing a deep dive today.
Ooh, exciting.
I know, right? Into an article by Miriam Burchant.
Okay.
She's a data scientist, and she's kind of cracked the code on how simple actions can make you a more magnetic, engaging person. So think of this as like a cheat sheet for better connections with people.
I like that, a cheat sheet. So what kind of cool are we talking about here? Not like, trying to be the most popular or anything.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. And Merchant actually starts the article off with this story about a restaurant that she loved.
Okay.
The food was amazing, but the owner was consistently rude to her.
Oh, no.
And guess what? She stopped going, even though the food was amazing.
Yeah, I can see why. I mean, who wants to deal with that, even for good food? It really shows how a bad interpersonal experience can completely overshadow even the best offerings.
100%. So it sounds like this deep dive is all about how to make sure we're not that rude restaurant owner.
Well, more like how to be the opposite, I'd say. Merchant really emphasizes that kindness is like the foundation of cool. It's kind of the bedrock where every other cool action can be built on.
Okay, so kindness is key. Got it.
Yeah.
But what does that look like in action? Like, how do we actually do kindness?
Well, Merchant gives us a list of 25 specific things.
Okay.
But instead of just listing them all out,
Right.
let's kind of break them down into some themes. The first one that really stood out to me was this whole idea of active listening and engagement.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's all about, tapping into that fundamental human need to feel understood. Like when someone truly listens to us,
Yeah.
remembers those little details we've shared, it just makes us feel like we really matter.
It's so true. It's such a difference when someone's just waiting for their turn to talk
The worst.
versus someone who's actually absorbing what you're saying. And Merchant actually has this great quote in the article. She says, "Listen to understand, not to respond."
Oh, that's so good. And, it applies to more than just face-to-face conversations too, right? Like
Yeah.
following up on a recommendation someone gave you, circling back after a chat. It all shows that you were actually paying attention,
Right.
that what they said had an impact.
Okay, so active listening, checking in on people, got it. What's another category of these cool actions?
Let's see. How about thoughtful gestures? Just those small acts of kindness that can really make someone's day.
Oh, I like that.
So Merchant mentions things like asking if someone needs anything when you're headed to the store.
Right.
Remembering those important dates.
Yeah.
Or even something as small as waiting for someone while they tie their shoes.
Yeah, I mean, those sound super simple, but I bet they make a big difference. I remember this one time I was having like a crazy stressful day,
Oh, no.
and a coworker noticed I was out of coffee. They actually went out of their way to get me my favorite latte. Like seriously, it turned my whole day around.
Wow.
It's wild how these little things can have such a big impact.
It really shows how powerful it can be to just pay attention to those around you, We never really know what someone's going through.
True.
And that small act of kindness could be exactly what they need to feel appreciated and seen.
Okay, so far we've got active listening, thoughtful gestures. What else is on the cool checklist?
Let's talk about sharing and generosity. So Merchant highlights things like sharing credit when it's due, being generous with your resources, even letting someone merge in front of you in traffic.
I feel like all of these have this ripple effect. They create a more positive vibe in general.
You're right. There's definitely a strong link between generosity and well-being, not just for the receiver, but for the giver too. Like when we share, we're fostering this sense of community and connection, and it often inspires others to be generous in return. It creates like a whole cycle of goodwill.
I love that. And speaking of good vibes, there's something to be said for celebrating others' successes too. Merchant actually quotes Mark Twain on this one. She says, "The best way to cheer yourself is to try to cheer someone else up."
I love that. And it's so true. Like celebrating someone else's win doesn't diminish our own. If anything, it makes us happier. When we share in someone else's joy, it creates this positive feedback loop where everyone feels good.
Okay, so we've got being good listeners, thoughtful, generous, and celebratory. What else do we need to be cool?
Well, Let's move on to a category that's all about integrity and respect. Things like following through on promises, being patient with others, respecting boundaries, being honest but kind, and taking responsibility for your mistakes.
These are the things that really build trust.
Yeah.
Right? They show that you're reliable, that you value treating others well. It's not always easy to do, but I can see how those actions are essential for building those strong relationships.
Oh, absolutely. They might not be the most glamorous, but they're like the foundation of any healthy relationship.
Wow, we've covered so much already. Kindness, listening, thoughtful gestures, generosity, celebrating others, and the importance of integrity and respect. I feel like there's so much to this idea of being cool. Let's take a pause and come back to delve a little deeper into some of the specifics and how we can actually put all of this into practice.
Welcome back. Ready to dig into some more of these cool-making actions?
Oh, yeah. I'm excited to see what else is on this list and how we can actually, put them into practice.
That's the key, right? Turning knowledge into action.
Exactly. Before the break, we were talking about smiling at dogs, offering help without overstepping.
Right.
What other, gems from this list stood out to you?
Let's see. One that really caught my eye is introducing people to each other.
Oh, yeah. I like that one.
It seems so simple on the surface,
right?
But it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, totally. It's like you're playing matchmaker, but for friendships or collaborations, or even just cool conversations, you never know what could come out of it.
Precisely. You could spark a new business partnership.
Right.
Or a lifelong friendship. It's amazing.
I feel like that ties into that sense of community that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
What about checking in on quiet people? That one really resonated with me.
Oh, that's a good one. It's so easy to overlook those who are, a little more introverted, especially in a group setting.
Right.
It's like, the focus naturally goes to those who are more talkative.
Right, definitely.
But taking that moment to check in with the quieter folks, ask their opinions, it can really make them feel seen and valued.
Yeah, it shows that you value what they have to say.
Absolutely.
Even if they're not, shouting it from the rooftops.
And it creates this space where everyone feels comfortable.
Yeah.
Regardless of their personality.
Totally. And that makes me think about the whole idea of respecting boundaries, too.
Oh, boundaries are so important.
But they can be a little tricky to navigate sometimes.
They can.
Because, I think people worry about coming off as, rude or standoffish if they're asserting their boundaries too much.
Right. It's all about finding that balance.
So how do we strike that balance?
Well, I think it comes down to awareness and communication. First, remembering that everyone has their own boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
What feels comfortable for one person might feel totally different for someone else.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we all have those invisible lines.
Exactly. So pay attention to those cues, both verbal and nonverbal.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask for clarification if you're unsure.
Right.
And always, always respect someone's no as a complete sentence.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that their needs and comfort levels might be different from our own, and that's okay.
It is.
So we're talking about physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, even time boundaries.
Right. Any area where someone might need to set those limits.
Yeah.
It's about honoring that space without judgment.
So it's not just about saying no when we need to. It's also about being mindful of those boundaries, even when they're not explicitly stated.
Exactly. And, that leads us to another important action from Merchant's list.
Okay.
Being honest, but kind.
Oh, that can be a tough one. Especially when it comes to giving feedback or having a difficult conversation. How do we balance that honesty with compassion?
Yeah. Especially when it's a sensitive issue.
Exactly. You can end up being too blunt, or you can sugarcoat it so much that the message gets lost.
Right, exactly.
How do we find that sweet spot?
Well, the key is to approach those conversations with empathy, and a genuine desire to actually help the other person grow. Focus on the behavior, not the person.
So instead of saying, you're always so disorganized,
right,
you could say something like, hey, I noticed that the deadline was missed. Is there anything I can do to help you stay on track in the future?
Exactly. You framed it in a constructive way,
right,
while still being honest and direct.
And supportive.
Okay.
I like that. What about taking responsibility for our mistakes?
Ah, that's a big one. No one's perfect. We all mess up sometimes.
We do.
But how we handle those moments says a lot about us.
Yeah, for sure.
It's tempting to get defensive, make excuses, or even blame someone else.
Totally.
But taking ownership,
Yeah.
Apologizing sincerely and making amends that builds trust.
It shows integrity and humility too, which I feel like are definitely cool qualities.
100%.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
It's made me realize that cool isn't this like mysterious thing. It's something we can all cultivate
It is.
with a little effort and a good heart.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else from Merchant's article that you think is really essential for our listeners?
I feel like we've, uncovered all these hidden gems,
Right.
all these little things we can do to connect better and make the world a little brighter.
And I love how Merchant reframes cool. It's not about being aloof or following trends. It's about warmth and consideration.
And integrity.
Yes. Which makes me think, what if we overthink it?
Yeah.
Could we end up performing coolness instead of just being, authentically kind?
That's a good point. And it really highlights the importance of intention. These actions are most effective when they're genuine.
Right.
Not some kind of strategy to impress people.
So it's about being kind, not just seeming kind.
Exactly. It's about cultivating those good qualities so they become part of who you are.
I love that letting those qualities shine through. So it's not about memorizing a script. It's more about, embodying a way of being.
Yes. And I think as you embody those qualities, you will naturally attract like-minded people.
Oh, that's interesting. So it creates this ripple effect of positivity.
Exactly. It becomes less about what can I get and more about what can I give.
That's a good shift in perspective. This deep dive has been so eye-opening. I'm realizing that cool isn't this elusive thing.
Right.
It's something we can all work towards.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination.
So as we wrap up, what resonated most with you from our exploration?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's that reminder that even the smallest gestures can make a big difference.
So true. And what's one small action you can take this week to, brighten someone's day or strengthen a connection?
It doesn't have to be anything grand. A smile, a thoughtful question, a genuine compliment, these little acts of kindness can really go a long way.
We hope you've been inspired to embrace the power of these small but mighty actions.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep spreading that coolness.